Our second reading comes from the Gospel of Luke again. It's writing so tiny.
Yeah.
Fear not, little flock, for it has pleased your Abba to give you the kingdom. Sell what you own and give the money to poorer people. Make purses for yourselves that don't wear out, treasures that won't fail you, in heaven that thieves can't steal and moths cannot destroy. For wherever your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. Be dressed and ready and keep your lamps lit. Be like the household staff awaiting the owner's return from a wedding, so that when the owner arrives and knocks, you'll open the door without delay. It will go well with those staff members whom the owner finds wide awake upon returning. I tell you the absolute truth. The owner will put on an apron, seat them at table, and proceed to wait on them. Should the owner happen to come at midnight or before sunrise and find them prepared, it will go well with them. Understand this. No homeowner who knew when a thief was coming would have let the thief break in. So be on guard. The promised one will come when least expected. These are the words of God for the people of God. Let's pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Back in elementary school, when we were learning about plant life, we had this assignment to come to school with 5 regular pinto beans. And then we were given small clear plastic cups and some paper towel, which we had to wet and put at the bottom of the plastic cup. We were supposed to put our beans on top of that first wet paper towel and then cover with another piece of wet paper towel. And our job for the next few days was to keep those paper towels wet. My interest was absolutely piqued because I just couldn't see how this simple exercise was going to produce anything that we were learning about plant life in our science textbooks. And so, being the rule follower that I am, I kept those paper towels wet like I was supposed to. But I was also constantly peeking inside, underneath that paper towel, eagerly waiting to see changes. Now, the rules didn't say don't peek, so I did. Then one day, quite unexpectedly, I saw that sprouts had appeared. I continued to keep that paper towel wet, and I continued to lift it and look for more changes, and the sprouts continued to grow longer, only during times that I wasn't looking, it seemed like. But even so, it was still so very exciting to get to see this growth happen. And as the roots began to develop from the sprouts, we were instructed to move the plants into cups with soil in them. And then we had to keep on watering the plant, but this time we also had to put it in the sun so that it could continue to grow. I was absolutely obsessed with my little sproutlings. In my eagerness to see what would happen next and to maybe catch them doing something, I was always peeking at their progress, and yet every single time the changes were only happening when I was not looking. They would take place while I was asleep or when I was at school. The sproutlings eventually became little bean plants that rose above the soil. And each time I came back to look, yet again, something major had occurred. My 5 little beans turned into beautiful little green plants in a matter of weeks. And it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that I spent so many hours with my plant trying to figure out what was coming and when it would be coming. What I've since learned as an adult is that whatever was next for my plant, it would happen when it was ready to happen. No amount of my peeking and supposed watchfulness would make it happen any quicker on my own time. I think most people would agree that I was absolutely trying my very best to be on guard. With my constant peering and prying and shifting soil, it was a wonder these poor plants even made it as far as they did. But I think that in some ways, this illustrates part of Luke's points in this gospel reading for today. We hear in those last two verses, no homeowner who knew when a thief was coming would let that thief break in. So be on guard. The promised one will come when least expected. The people to whom Luke was speaking would not know when the promised one would be coming, but only that he would be coming. It seems Luke is speaking to a couple things here. The first is that we can't know or predict when Christ's coming occurs, only that it does and that it will. Much like my bean plants, I didn't know when the moments of transformation were going to happen, but because I had a textbook and a convincing teacher, I knew it would occur, and in fact it did. Luke implores us to stay on the ready, getting caught up in calculating hours and event sequences in an effort to predict the anticipated moment of Christ's return, which no one can do anyway, keeps us inattentive to the important matters in the world. We get sidetracked with different illusions of control over matters that are way beyond us. We get sucked into the capitalistic myth of security, chasing after money and material things that we're told will keep us safe, when these treasures will surely fail us. Luke points out that when we put our hearts into the treasure society sells us, we can't have our hearts where they're supposed to be, minding the very things that we're called to do and be that actually matter. There are no careful predictions or preparations that will affect when or how Christ returns. Here's something else I learned from those bean plants now that I'm older. The changes I observed didn't just happen overnight, even though it felt like it. For many years, it never even occurred to me that the growth had been happening all along, and not just in major bursts when I wasn't looking. The change was constant, incremental, and ongoing. And that, I think, is the other underlying piece that Luke wants his listeners to understand. Much too often, I've experienced different ways that people seem to be more interested in the big, obvious signs of Christ, looking past the here and now, and thinking only of the great beyond when there will be trumpets blaring and clouds rolling back. There seems to be this mentality that they'll live how they want to live now, but then get it together at a future date, sometime before Jesus returns. It reminds me of a bumper sticker I saw several years ago that kind of captures this in a funny way. The sticker reads, "Jesus is coming. Look busy." Not only is Luke speaking to the fruitlessness of attempting to predict Christ's return, but he also seems to be bringing us into this essential awareness that we must have to the Christ who is already and always present amid the daily dealings of our lives. If only we're attentive to the opportunities of being faithful recipients of God's love, we can be always prepared. On any given day, we would do well to live in ways that are consistent with what we say we believe. However we look at this text, one question that keeps coming up in my mind is what will we be doing when Christ comes unexpectedly? How will we be spending our days and hours and time leading up to Christ's return? I hope the answer is doing justice, loving kindness, and walking humbly with God. I hope the answer is feeding the poor and clothing the naked, inviting the stranger and caring for the sick and imprisoned. I hope the answer is being on guard to God's continuous activity in our world here and now, keeping alert in the middle of all the different crisis moments we experience nowadays. It is true that things aren't always going to be smooth or easy. In this country, we know this in a way we've never known it before. For many years, we've collectively had the privilege of not having to pay attention to those we've elected to lead and care for the people. We've gotten to neglect the cries of God's people because it was just distant enough from us. Or even for those of us who have been involved, or maybe are the ones who are crying out. Going against the grain of society sometimes has ended up being more costly than the very afflictions that are causing us to cry out. So we've learned how to absorb the elements and thicken our sin and just keep on moving. In this time of quickening atrocities and the need to respond faithfully and act compassionately, this is also a time to lament. Not just our losses, but even for the active injustices that are playing out legally right before our eyes. We can cry out about the conditions of the world. We can cry out about the conditions of our communities, our families, or even ourselves. Cry out to God, because doing so allows us to give God our troubles. As we cry out, we renew our hope in knowing that our situations, though sometimes dire, are left in God's care. As we cry out, we're embodying a trust in God that frees us up to prepare more intentionally and relevantly for Christ's return and activity in this world. Whether we're lamenting or peeking incessantly at our progress, or drowning in the news cycle, or pouring ourselves out for the different causes in our hearts, we can be reminded that wherever our curiosities and explorations reside nowadays, God has been faithful, God is faithful, and God will always be faithful. We can put our hopes in knowing the truth about God that we serve, that wherever we find ourselves in life, we can put our hope in the promise that God is faithful. But to have this kind of hope requires for us to be aware, prepared, and on guard at any moment as Luke addresses. This hope is an active hope. Having a hope rooted in the knowledge and belief that God is already here and will continue to be here and active in our lives requires for us to see ourselves and the world differently. It requires transformation in our lives, that we can go about living in a way that even as we experience troubles, even as we extend ourselves to meet others in the midst of their troubles, we must remain mindful and alert to the Christ already in our midst. In the season of visioning and listening for what God is calling us to be and do in this time and place, may we all be filled with this active and transformative hope that will help keep us alert to the Christ in our midst, even and especially in ways we could never expect.